Good evening, good evening, good evening. It's Dr. Seymour. How are you? Good evening. Come on in. Again, it's Dr. Seymour, Merrick Seymour, and I want to welcome you to this edition of Rethinking Christian Education. Got a question for you. Why is Christian education so vital to the life and the health of the local church? And hopefully, in our discussion today, we'll talk about and answer that question. And so, if we think about what is Christian education has been defined as everything outside of worship that helps us to grow in our faith. That Christian education is every effort that the church makes to grow the body, the mind, and the spirit. And for this time together, Christian education, we'll use it synonymously with discipleship. And so if we took the word discipleship and broke it up into two parts, what do we get? Before we go any further, I want to make sure we take care of some housekeeping norms rather. One, make your comments as often as you need to. Any questions that you may have, post them in the chat. If you're viewing us live, let me know that you're viewing live. If you're watching the replay, let us know you're watching the replay. And let me know where you're watching from. And then make sure you like and you share with a Christian educator you know. And so who's welcome to this space? Well, everybody is welcome. This is not a space where we argue about what one believes versus another. We're simply talking about rethinking Christian education. And so pastors are invited. Directors of Christian education are invited. Those with the gift of teaching in the church are invited. Those who are interested in the life of the church by way of education and discipleship are invited. And so back to our discussion. What is Christian education and why is it so vital to the life of the church? And so again, we'll use Christian education synonymously to discipleship. And so if I go back and forward, I'm still talking about Christian education when I refer to it as the process of discipling. And so if I look at the word discipleship and I divide it into two parts, the word disciple, though it's mentioned over 200 times in the New Testament, disciple literally means a learner. A disciple is a learner, one that can be trained. And then ship, based on its Latin origin, Skype, simply means a couple things: the state of, the condition in, or the condition, contained in, or the condition of. And so if we put learner together with the original definition of ship, discipleship is the learner plus the state of equaling the state of learning. Discipleship is contained in learning. Or discipleship, one might say, is the condition to learn, or conditioned to learn. And so not only is discipleship or Christian education internal conditioning of the believer, but it also involves the active participation or the active manifestation of that individual's relationship with God. I'll say that again. Christian education or discipleship is not only the work going on the inside of a believer, but it's also the manifestation or the end result of that individual's relationship with God as a result of being discipled or as a result of having Christian education treatment. According to Matthew 28:19, that's our premise for this whole CE talks, Jesus gives to his trained disciples, and that word right there, his trained disciples, one last responsibility. And that one last responsibility that he gave to his trained disciples was to train more disciples. Before he ascended into heaven, he gave them one assignment to not just stay where they are, but go into various parts of the world and train more disciples. And those disciples were to train more disciples. And those disciples were to train more disciples. You and I might recognize that as what we call in my world, train the trainer. So Jesus, before he left, had trained the future trainers to go out and train more disciples. Christian education is the process of training disciples to train more disciples. Discipleship, Christian discipleship, is not the responsibility of someone else. In fact, Christian discipleship is the task based on Matthew 28 and the assignment and the responsibility of the church. Christian discipleship is the task assigned to the church. It couldn't be given off to someone else. It was given to the church to train more disciples who would train more disciples. Now, Christian education or discipleship is not to address part of us, but it's to address all of us, our whole selves, and our whole lives. It's not just a Sunday thing, but it's an everyday thing. It's just not. It's not designed to show us how to live in one part of our lives. Christian education, discipleship, addresses all of the parts of our lives. Okay, it teaches us how to relate to God, how to relate to our neighbors, how to relate to the world. Christian education is also designed to teach us how to respond to God, how to respond to those things that our neighbors may say and do, how to respond to those things that are going on in the world. It is the task of the church to train disciples, to administer the Christian education, not in one department of the church, but throughout all departments of the church. And I'll always say this, that while Christian education sometimes goes unnoticed or it doesn't get as much attention and stage time as some other ministries in church, we know that Christian education is not effective when members of the church don't know what they need to know to be competent disciple makers. Christian education has not done its job when members of the church are not strong enough to strengthen other disciples. It's that job that doesn't get it doesn't get an annual day, and it doesn't get a parade, and it doesn't get flowers and plaques and pats on the back. But you know when Christian education has not done its job, when one part of the church is not able to function properly. So Christian education is extremely vital to the life of the church, because the church is not four walls. The church are those individuals who have this shared belief in Jesus Christ and this wanting to grow closer to him. The church is who we are, and we take the church outside of the four walls in search of other disciples. And when the church has not put in place a system, a program, a dynamic to adequately train disciples, someone is going to go out into the world in the name of a disciple and say the wrong thing. They're going to do the wrong thing. They're going to go to the wrong place because they have not been trained to be disciples. In addition to saying, doing, going the wrong places, they're going to not be available for what they need to be available for. I give you a good example. Imagine you're in the grocery store someone is not paying attention to what they're doing, and someone bumps into you with their cart, it's after a long work day for you. They keep bumping into you, not knowing what they're doing. If Christian education is not embedded somewhere in there, you're going to respond in a way that's not Christ-like. You're going to speak in a tongue that's not Christ-like. And so it's important that Christian education exists, because it does not just address our behavior at church when we're among the saints, but Christian education is there to address those other times when we're not among the saints, when we're out in the marketplace, when it is our task and our challenge to witness to others who have not heard the gospel of truth. Another example, that a mysterious check comes to your house and you don't know what to do with the check. You want to be excited, you don't want to be excited. You know the check is not yours. If Christian education is not in place, you might do the wrong thing. But Christian education is designed to cause us to think about, what would we do in this? What are we supposed to do in this situation? And so, again, Christian education is not one of those jobs, not one of those ministries that gets a lot of attention. But you know that Christian education ministry is not effective when its ministers, when its disciples are not competent, capable of doing what they need to do. And so let's think about the evolution of Christian education. First, we were passing along what we believed. Pass along, I believe in God, I believe in Jesus Christ, I believe in the Holy Spirit, and I teach my family to believe in it, and I teach my family's families to believe in it, and they teach their families. We were indoctrined, we were embedded, the doctrine was embedded into us. We were fellowshipped into discipleship. And then we began to share what we believed in a structured way, or in a structured manner. Some of us began having Sunday school. Some of us began to have weekly Bible studies. Some of us even shared Bible studies even on our jobs. We started having vacation Bible school. Then we started having Saturday school and Monday school, and all ways of sharing what we believed in a structured way. And some of us have even expanded out to small groups where there's a set curriculum and there's a set process of how we share what we believe. We were educated into discipleship. And then there are those that we have evolved to where we verbalize what we believe outside of the fellowship, through outreach and through witnessing. And in this situation, we proclaim discipleship. We're telling the story. So some of us came into the knowing of discipleship, or were discipled because someone told us what they believed, and we believed what they believed. And so I'm wondering, which one of those is most important? Well, actually, they all are important. Between you and I'm going to share what I believe. When a group of us get together, we start formulating some structure of sharing what we believe. And then we find that individuals within the group have the capacity to go outside of the group and tell others. At this point, the church should be engaged in some form of Christian education or discipleship, whether it is just sharing what you believe, whether it is teaching what you believe, whether it's proclaiming what you believe. And there are two things that should happen as a result of good Christian education or good discipleship. One thing that should happen with discipleship is that new converts should be drawn to Christ. That's one thing. So everything that Christian education does, it does it with the intent of exposing, presenting Jesus Christ to others, making disciples. And then the other end game, or the output, or the outcome of good Christian discipleship, is that those that are already disciples are strengthened and trained and developed. And so if disciples are being made, and if disciples are being trained to make disciples, then that Christian education could be considered good Christian education. But keep in mind, there should be evidence. There should be evidence that your church is making disciples, whether it's sharing the belief, whether it's teaching the belief, whether it's proclaiming the belief. As a result of those things, disciples should be coming forward, because that was the one assignment that Jesus Christ gave the trained disciples. So there should be evidence that the church is making the effort to disciple, and the disciples are coming forward. Whatever the church is doing, the church should always be supporting those who are disciples. I remember growing up, I would always hear in sermons and the like that said that the church was like the gas station. And on Sundays, it was your day to come and get filled up so that you can go back out into the world. And I never could understand that until I got a little older, when I realized, oh, okay, our work as disciples is not just in church, but we're supposed to come to the church to get refueled to go back out into the world, to follow the Great Commission, to go and make disciples, teach them and train them in the ways of Jesus Christ. And so if you sit back and assess what it is Christian education is doing, are we making disciples, or are we strengthening disciples so that they can remain faithful and strong, competent, confident disciples in the work of ministry? If the answer is yes, to God be the glory. If the answer is no, or you're not certain, and if there's not sure evidence, then this might be a time for you to rethink Christian education. Because again, our whole purpose as Christian educators is to not be a set-aside department, but it's to undergird the entire church. And when we're not doing our job, when we're not teaching members of the congregation of the body of Christ what it means to be a Christian, if we're not teaching them how to live lives of Christian principles, if we're not teaching them how to let the Spirit of God live and be on display within our lives, then we're not doing our jobs. And it's only noticeable when a confessed believer cannot do what a disciple is designed to do, and that's make disciples. And so, recap: Christian education is discipleship. It's a state or condition of continuous learning. It's not just internal conditioning of the believer, but it should be an active manifestation of an individual's relationship with God. And Christian education, it addresses the whole person. It not just addresses that whole person on one day, but it's the whole person. It's the whole life of a person. Christian education, discipleship, is the task of the Christian church. This has been Dr. Marix Seymour with CE Talks. You and I, let's rethink Christian education. Join me next week here again when we go further into Christian education. Don't forget to share your comments. Don't forget to share it with anyone who's involved with Christian education. Everyone is welcome. But then make sure you click that like button to let me know you were there. All right. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.